I want to begin. We're joined by a number of folks here as we begin to sign HB 21-1298, which would expand background checks to make sure that those who commit violent acts cannot immediately purchase a weapon. I want to thank Joel Loomis, a survivor of the King Soopers shooting, friends and family who have lost their loved ones to gun violence, Representative Sullivan and Representative Senator Fields. We have advocates from Moms Demand Action, Youth Violence Protection Action Table, and so many others. And the sponsors of the bills will be saying a few words, but we have other legislators who are with us. We have Representative Froelich and Representative McCormick. Any other folks that are not sponsors that are with us? Okay. We also have Mayor Sam Weaver of Boulder, Councilwoman Rachel Friend of Boulder, Aaron Brockett from Boulder, Claire Levy is here, I think, Commissioner. Any other local electeds? Okay. And now we will begin. So the first bill is HB 21-1298. I want to thank Representative Amabile, Representative Woodrow, Senator Gonzalez, Senator Pedersen. We have a good background check process in Colorado. Nothing's perfect. At times there's delays, but it works pretty well when somebody is a convicted felon up until now and loses their right under the due process of law to buy a weapon. We catch it most of the time and prevent them from doing so. This simply expands that to criminal misdemeanor offenses in the last 5 years if there's a violent offense. And that means things like sexual assault and hate crimes and violent crimes. And we know that if somebody is prone to commit those types of crimes, it's much more dangerous if they do so with a gun than if they do so with their fists or with a knife. We always believe in second chances, and we hope that if that person serves their term and 10 years later, 15 years later, they haven't committed any acts, of course, they have their rights restored. This just covers the last 5 years of a violent misdemeanor to make sure that they have a period of time to make sure that they're able to get their inner demons under control before they have legal access to a firearm. This bill requires that licensed gun dealers have approval from the Colorado Bureau of Investigations. It extends the deadline in the order for the Bureau to have a comprehensive appeal when a transfer is denied. We had trouble with the increased demand for guns during the pandemic. There was trouble getting all of the appeals done on time, so we were deferring them, and this statutorily allows us to have more time at the Colorado Department of Public Safety to do appeals. That's when somebody wants to purchase a weapon, there is a reason that they can't. They of course have the right to appeal that because it might be some out of date or incorrect court record, and so this gives us time to be able to adjudicate that appeal properly. When all checks are done, our system is effective at doing a better job keeping firearms out of the hands of those who pose a threat to our community. I want to thank Representative Amabile, Representative Woodrow, Senator Gonzalez, Senator Pedersen, and gun violence prevention advocates for their collaboration on this important bill. And with that, I'll turn it over to Representative Amabile.
Thank you very much, Governor. I appreciate your comments, and that was a great explanation of the bill. And I want to say thank you to everybody who's here. It really means a lot to the people in Boulder who were the victims of this shooting. It's been 90 days since the shooting happened, and our community is still in a lot of upheaval and a lot of hurt. And I particularly wanted to say thank you to Joel for coming today. Joel has testified on all the bills that we have collectively run, and he's really been a champion for making some changes. So it's very clear that we need to do everything in our power to slow this epidemic of gun violence that's happening here in Colorado and all across the country. And it isn't just about mass shootings. It's about what we sadly call everyday gun violence. And I think we should all take a minute to have that sink in, that every day people are dying all across our state from homicides, from accidents, from mass shootings, and mostly from suicide. And everything we can do in our power to slow that down is a life saved. And that is really the purpose of this bill. It's to save lives. And when the shooting happened, the people in my community demanded that we take action. And I want to thank Rachel Friend and Sam Weaver and Dawn Renfield, because they were on the front line of emailing me and calling me and saying, it's on you, do something. And this is what today is about, because we did do something, and we've done something really meaningful, and we are going to save lives. And that's the whole point. There is no other point. It is about saving lives. So thank you, and thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Governor Polis. Thank you, Representative Amabile, for your words. I'm honored to be here with you all this morning. I want to first begin by thanking the survivors of gun violence who came and testified, Joel, and so many others. You shared your heartbreak and your pain in this hopes to spur change. And I want to also thank my colleagues alongside whom I worked, Senator Brittany Pedersen, Representative Judy Amabile, and Representative Stephen Woodrow. My name is Senator Julie Gonzalez. I represent North, West, and downtown Denver in the state Senate. And today marks 6 years and 2 days, 2,195 days since the mass shooting in Charleston, South Carolina. And today is 90 days exactly since the mass shooting in Boulder. I think we're all tired and exhausted by holding on to these anniversaries of these tragedies, because each and every one of those anniversaries, whether we're talking about a mass shooting or whether we're talking about an individual act, an everyday act of gun violence, the shootings that happen in my community, the acts of domestic violence, the acts of suicide. Each one of those anniversaries is a reminder of what could have been, of the pain of loss. And it's why we're so proud today to hopefully mark a new anniversary, a happy day, happy memory. And that's the day that we're signing these bills into law. House Bill 1298 will expand Colorado's background check system and make it more effective by ensuring that people who have been convicted of a serious and violent misdemeanor offense are not allowed to receive a firearm for 5 years from the date of their conviction. As someone who believes strongly in rehabilitation, I want to say to folks that this is an opportunity for individuals who have been convicted of these offenses to rehabilitate, to make changes in their lives, to address the root causes of their trauma, and to move forward in a safe way. Governor, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sign this bill into law. And again, I just want to thank everyone who's here today for all of the work that you have done on this and so many other policies. Thank you very much.
Let's make it the law of Colorado. Officially the law of Colorado.
You know, we always ask ourselves after each of these events, what could we do to prevent it? It is quite possible that this bill that we just signed, the one we just signed, might have prevented what happened in Boulder, because the suspect there did have the type of violent conviction that would have rendered him ineligible for purchasing that weapon. Now, you never know what the next one is, and we always try to solve the last one, but combined, this body of law reduces the likelihood of these kinds of events. When gun tragedy strikes, it strikes deeply at the hearts and minds of those closest to it, and I think it was particularly frustrating. And as a resident of Boulder, Boulder actually tried to do more. They actually passed it. They did additional measures. However, those measures were struck down, not because they were unconstitutional, not because they violated the Second Amendment, they didn't, but because of preemption. And so what this bill does is it makes sure that local governments do have the ability to regulate firearms under the Second Amendment. And that's exactly what Senate Bill 21-256 does. I appreciate the work of Representative Hooten, Representative Doherty, Senator Fenberg, and Senator Moreno to amplify calls for local communities to find real solutions that make sense in their area. And we have a very diverse state, and I've generally approached to endorse the local control approach, whether it's something like minimum wage, whether it's something like additional zoning authority, or whether it's to find the right balance to support gun safety. And this bill will allow the cities that want to pursue these kinds of laws to do so consistent with the Second Amendment. I would finally add that this bill will not interfere with anybody's ability to transport their firearms through areas. There's in statute the legal ability to do that, so you don't have to worry if you're driving through Boulder or Denver because you're on your way to go hunting. It doesn't affect you. It simply affects the actions within that border and whether these weapons are sold and the process for possessing them. So it makes sense. I think it endorses our concept of local control, which appreciates the great cultural diversity of our state, and will reflect that in allowing communities to be able to move forward with their ability to legally regulate firearms consistent with the Second Amendment. With that, I'll turn it over to Senate Majority Leader Fenberg.
Thank you so much, Governor, for your leadership and for signing these bills today. Although the topic of these three bills are about pain and loss and trauma, I'm here today grounded in hope. I'm hopeful because step by step, bill by bill, we here in Colorado are creating safer communities. This past March, of course, the Boulder community, which I represent, felt something that so many other communities have already felt across this country. 10 lives were stolen. 10 lives stolen while they were working at their job, helping a customer bag their groceries, or grabbing a last item to make a family dinner. These were small business owners, a police officer, mothers, fathers, a Special Olympian, and grandparents-to-be. They meant obviously so much to so many different people throughout the community. There's something that I think a mass shooting does to the psyche of a community collectively, even if you weren't individually involved or impacted. And it really kind of disrupts the way you move through your daily life, through your world. This was a grocery store where I've shopped many times, my wife shops. It is a part of our community that is central to so many of us. This pattern kind of shakes us, and it shakes our sense of safety in very normal places, like a movie theater, like a grocery store, like a mall, like our workplaces, or where you're going to pray. After the tragedy in Boulder, so many of us who are here today got together. We had long, late-night phone calls. We met with the national experts on gun violence prevention, and really just asked ourselves one question. What can we do in this moment that will result in saving the most lives? That was the straightforward, simple directive that led us over the next month or so before we introduced these 3 bills. The answer to that question at this point in time is the package that we moved forward successfully this year. And it's not just these 3 bills, but there are other policies that we got done this legislative session. We know there's not a single one piece of legislation that will end gun violence in our communities, but we can work policy by policy. We can create a framework that over time will result in saving lives, will result in safer communities, will result in us not having to live in fear for some of our very basic daily activities. I'm proud to have worked with my colleagues on these bills, especially Senate Bill 256, which will, as the governor said, will allow local cities and counties to use their uniquely tailored skill set and awareness of what it takes to keep their community safe. It will allow Boulder to reinstate policies that, as the governor mentioned, were overturned by an NRA-supported lawsuit just 10 days before the King Soopers shooting. The signing of this bill is important because it acknowledges also that each community has unique expertise to know what it takes to keep them safe. And when people's lives are at stake, be it by suicide, street violence that happens unfortunately every day, or a mass shooting event like what happened in Boulder, local communities should have all the tools they need to prevent the next unnecessary tragedy, to save lives. As Representative Amabile said, that is what this is about, full stop. This bill acknowledges that each of Colorado's communities have a different relationship with firearms also. What works for Boulder probably is not going to work for Alamosa. What works for Sterling might not work for Denver. Our state includes a diverse set of communities, and we should allow each of these communities to look out for the safety of their residents. There's nothing we can do, of course, to bring back the lives of all of those who have been taken from us due to gun violence. There's no single policy we can pass that will guarantee additional lives aren't taken. But that's not a reason for inaction. As elected leaders in our state, we have a responsibility to do everything we can to save lives. We can only hope that one day Congress will take that responsibility seriously as well. But today, we're here to recognize the progress that we have made in Colorado. We're here to acknowledge the hard work of so many people inside this building as well as outside. And we're here to look forward to a safer Colorado. I want to thank all of the advocates that really have not just been fighting for this session, but for decades, for years. These policies really are years in the making. Thank you to Giffords, to Moms Demand Action, to Colorado Ceasefire, to Everytown for Gun Safety, everyone who has really dedicated their lives to saving other lives. Your work is incredibly important, and our communities will be safer because of it. So thank you. And next I want to introduce Representative Hooten.
Thank you, Senator Fenberg, and thank you, Governor, for providing us with this opportunity to sign these incredibly important bills. A couple of things I'd like to add. After our gun shooting in Boulder, there were calls for a lot of action to be taken. And what we did collectively, as Senator Fenberg pointed out so well, is that we spent many hours consulting with the organizations who work 365 days a year, 24 hours a day on reducing gun violence. And that would be Moms Demand Action, and Everytown for Gun Safety, and Ceasefire, and the Giffords Foundation. And they are absolutely central to every bill that we passed this year. And we went to them and we asked them, what do we prioritize? And this is what they told us, and this is the result of the legislation, 6 bills in total that we passed this year. So I just once again want to add my voice of appreciation to those organizations and their daily presence at the Capitol. It really makes a difference. So thanks to all of you so much. And also for the tireless advocacy of our communities who need the authority to pass ordinances and enact regulations that make their communities feel safer. Just as a reminder, in 1901, we amended our state constitution to give communities in Colorado the authority to pass stricter ordinances than the state allowed for gun violence prevention, and in 2003, it was overturned. So what this bill, Senate Bill 256, does is it restores a constitutional right that the state has had since 1901, and it was a real honor to carry this bill with my Boulder colleague and friend, Senator Fenberg, and with Representative Doherty. And so with that, I will let you continue on, Governor, but thanks again, everyone, for your participation in making these bills happen today.
It's official.
Yes.
Thank you. You know, this is Father's Day weekend, and no father should have to go through what Tom Sullivan went through. And it's hard, but he's found a meaning in it, and part of that meaning is to make sure that other fathers and mothers in our state don't have to go through the kind of tragic loss that he experienced. And as the father of a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, I appreciate his work every day in the legislature. This bill creates the Office of Gun Violence Protection in the Department of Public Health, because gun violence is a public health issue. We've been heartbroken by so many tragedies, from people taking their own lives to people taking the lives of others, to escalation of conflicts that needn't result in a loss of life. This simply means that we should look at evidence-based research and science, just as we do for car crashes, just as we do for alcohol, just as we do for COVID-19. And because healthier communities depend on the safe use of firearms and reducing the threat and impact of gun violence on all of us. This office will be housed within the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment and will help inform state and local policy making in the future. I want to thank Representative Sullivan, Representative Bacon, Senator Fields, who's also experienced tragic loss in her family to gun violence, and Senator Chris Hansen. With that, I'll turn it over to Representative Sullivan.
Tomorrow is the 8th Father's Day. I will have to endure since my son Alex was murdered by gun violence in the Aurora Theater. You see, all celebrations ended that day, and moving forward, I just try to get through it. Passage of legislation like this will ensure families can look forward to the tomorrows in the future. And I can find some comfort in that. I struggle, though, knowing how difficult today will be for those who will be impacted by gun violence on this very day. And I continue to be disappointed by the lack of courage by many to stop the yesterdays that took our loved ones. But that time is changing, and the strength, determination, and transformative legislation that this group behind me was a part of has made it clear that we will do whatever it takes to ensure safe tomorrows for our communities and to always be there to stand with those impacted by yesterday's tragedy. And this will start today. Thank you, Governor, for signing this much needed legislation. And happy Father's Day to all the dads who are impacted the way I have been and those that will be impacted in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Jennifer Bacon, and I have the honor of representing Northeast Denver. And the lens that I bring to this bill is to remind people not only that gun violence happens every day, and unfortunately, people who share my identity and background are 2, 3 times, 4 times more likely to have suffered from it. But I also come here to talk to people about the effects of this gun violence on our health. The impact of this bill cannot be understated. Every day, hundreds of people lose their lives as a result of a gun. And all of those people have families, they have neighbors, they have neighborhoods and communities. And the pain of that has begun to manifest in our bodies. The daily anxiety, the daily fear. I'm an educator. We have a generation of students who know what lockdowns are in active shooter drills. And so the way that we see this pain manifesting in our bodies means that if we want to see our communities thrive, we need to talk about the impact to our public health. So this bill addresses this issue, and this is not about the Second Amendment. This is not an anti-gun bill. This is a bill that acknowledges the impact of these types of weapons and asks for everyone in this community to do their part to train on safety, to train on support and help, and to remind each other the responsibility that we have to take care of ourselves. I will say too that gun violence prevention doesn't always look like moving all of the guns into a storage locker. It looks like investing in communities. Having a park or after-school activities is just as meaningful in saving lives than it is in putting a lock on a gun. If we want to see our numbers come down, we need to go to our communities who have said to us, we engage in this. I've heard from children because we are hungry, we do not have people to talk to or a place to go. And this bill puts all of that on the table. What are the root causes? How can we all play our part? What does our community say about how they are impacted so we can solve together? I've not lost a family member. My family members survived their gunshot wounds, but I've lost 4 students who look like me. And all they asked for was for someone to believe in their communities that they could be more than statistics. And so today I say thank you to everyone here who believes in our communities, who believes in each other, that we collectively as the state of Colorado can say this is something that we will no longer tolerate and work together from rural to urban. So I want to say thank you to all of those who survived for sharing your light with us so that we could do something that was deeply impactful and meaningful. And so again, I want to say thank you for everyone for being here. Thank you, Governor, for your work in support of this as well. Thank you.
Good morning, Colorado. And good morning to my beloved Governor, Polis. Because what you're looking at today is leadership. What you see behind me is what leadership looks like. It takes courage to do the kind of work we've been doing in Colorado. I've been serving for 11 years. And it takes courage to lead. And when I talk about gun violence prevention, we've been doing this work since 2013. I also want to say happy Juneteenth. Which is a day for my people, is a day of freedom. I also want to say happy Father's Day. Because a lot of times people focus on the mom when they've lost their son or their child. But oftentimes people don't think about the dad or the sibling. So I'm going to ask my daughter to join me, and I'm going to ask John Sullivan to join me, because we are survivors. But I can tell you this, when it happened to me, I thought I was the only one, but what I've learned is there is a community of people who have survived a lot of stuff. Who hasn't had a crisis in their life that you've overcome? But this work is not isolated, because it takes the body of our community and engagement. So Majority Leader Finberg, come on up here. You're a leader. My pastor, come on up here. Because I stand on the community of my faith. It's no way I could have transformed or emerged out of darkness if it wasn't for my faith and for community. For moms and men, action, come on up here. Come on up here. Ceasefire, come on up here. When I started this work in 2013, I was told to count my votes, and there was no way it was going to happen. And then Mom showed up.
Yeah, expect us.
And at that time, it was like every town, you know, whatever it was. But never, ever underestimate the love a mom or a dad or a sister has for their family. And many of the moms demand action. They just didn't want to see it happen in their community. They didn't want to see it happen in their family. So for the Boulder victims that are here today, please join me. Come on up. Because your voice matters. You might not have been a victim of crime violence, but you're a survivor of the impact that happens when your community is attacked. After Columbine, we closed the gun show loophole. After Aurora Theater shooting, Tom stepped up and other people stepped up, and we closed the loophole as it relates to private gun sales. In 2013, we did what we could as it relates to the background checks. Congress, you need to catch up with Colorado. Colorado is doing work that the nation has not performed to do on a national level. I don't know if there's, I know Brady is here. If there's any organization that I have not mentioned, please stand behind me, because this work would not have been possible without advocates and leadership to do this work. Nobody wants to do this work. It's hard enough to defend victims these days. No one really wants to do this work, but when you do, this is the outcome of it. we have 3 pieces of strong legislation that I believe that's going to change the course as it relates to gun violence reduction. The state of Colorado, I think there's only 2 others, we're going to have an office to help study and come up with evidence-based information about what we can do. My pastor's here because the church is going to be involved. I asked my stylist to be here. She didn't comb my hair today. But my son's barber needs to be here because this is where resolution is going to take place. It just can't be based on legislation. The church has to be involved. Small businesses have to be involved. Our schools have to be involved. Law enforcement has to be involved. Mental health, behavioral health, our hospitals, doctors. We all play a role in reducing gun violence in the state of Colorado. And you know what? We can do it. Thank you, Governor, for your leadership.
Let's sign the bill.
Yes.
Ready? It's official. Congratulations.